President Muhammad was broadcast to the nation last night with a repeat this morning. We have two guests with us in the studios. First, we'd like to welcome Dr. Chris Akomas. He's a former Deputy Governor of Abia State. Your Excellency, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We also have with us a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, is a security risk expert. Dr. Adamu, delighted to have you on the program.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay. All right. So let's begin with Dr. Chris Akomas. Dr. Chris Akomas, the President made his broadcast 13 minutes to the nation. What is your reflection on the President's message in the address?
Thank you, Kingsley. The President's message is very clear. For me, he went straight to the issue, which is one that the street protests is more than enough because it's more or less outside the hands and control of those that started the peaceful protest. And therefore, the need for us all to stop the street action and focus on dialogue. After all, every disagreement, quarrels, and wars end up at the table where decisions are taken and worked out better. And more is like reminding the young ones, the youth, to say, you may not have access to these programs of this administration. You may not have known much about them. There are social programs that are specifically, geared towards attending to the needs of the young ones. It may not be enough, but these ones are here and you can access them. The other aspect has to do with the fact that, for me, what I read from that is for people to understand that we have no other country than Nigeria. And actions and things that will lead to attack on our economic interests and our collective peace and harmony should be, everything should be done to stop that. If you look at certain paragraphs of that speech, it focused majorly on appealing to the sense of understanding and patriotism for country. Yes, there has been even friends calling to say, Mr. President did not say much about what happened at the Lekki toll gates and things like that. There are aspects of being responsible for the people, aspects of authority, and there are processes. The process of looking into a number of things that has happened. We know that what led to this protest is built up, would you call it impunity and brutality over the years. It's not as if they just started. And also the push that led to the movement is also built up anger over the years. So, and the reaction of government, especially the moves made by the governor of Lagos State, who quickly got the 5 for 5, the demand, and presented it to Mr. President, who responded. The IGP responded, you want SARS no more, end SARS. SARS was disbanded. You want justice for those victims that suffered that. The NEC went into action, states set up judicial panels of inquiry, and many states have set up that. It's a process. Reform takes some time. It doesn't happen overnight. And when the message is clear, accepted, the proper thing is to give room for that reform, for actions to be taken. And then you monitor and see how well it is. So for me, the message, the speech was just asking everybody to remember that we should work together. We have to work together to make good the demands as agreed that this 5 for 5. Government have also agreed, and people, reasonable people have said, this 5 for 5 is necessary going forward. But the emphasis on the fact that the acceptance of that 5 for 5, the clarity of the message, which he said, we have heard you loud and clear, is just the beginning of a whole lot of reform that will have to take place within the Nigerian police force. It's something that should be, it's a lot. So I think he has captured all those. The other aspects that may appear not to have been taught, as I mentioned, are areas that people are coming up with information which may be true or half truth or not true at all. And for a government, you deal on facts. And this is a presidential speech. He's the president and commander-in-chief of the Federation, of the Federal Republic of Nigeria speaking. You don't just say things. You have to get the facts. And yesterday, too, we got the message from the spokesman of the Nigerian Army. The federal government has set up a panel to look into what happened at the Lekki toll gate. You know, so these are issues, and I think for me, in asking our friends, neighbors, and the international community to, you know, assess the facts before making this, it's like, say, what is the business of Aba Town Hall, one of the oldest town hall with NSAS? What is the business of somebody's old family house with NSAS? What is the business of MPA? The business of BRT, this thing. The business of people. Stop. You know, it's important to note that one bad thing to happen is when you are fighting for justice and you end up being an instrument or accessory to injustice to others and maybe majority of the people.
All right. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. Chris Akomas. Thank you. Dr. Kabiru, as an intelligence officer, once again, let me welcome you to the program.
Thank you.
In terms of duration and content, Mr. President has always been very consistent. If you check all his broadcasts, they've been simple, they've been short, simple, and concise. But in terms of our immediate dilemma, what logical inference can we draw from it?
I had time overnight to review the speech and to also do an analysis based on the feedback that I have seen across the Federation. And I'll quickly run through 6 sub-themes that I drew from the message. One of them is as he emphasized as a democratic state, the right to protest. Very important. Nigerians, that resonated with Nigerians because as a democratic president, he is recognizing that right. The second one is he rejected the lawlessness that emerged from the protest. Now, as a security specialist and an intelligence specialist, we know that the movement was likely hijacked. Whether it was a script from the beginning or some forces took advantage of the protest to now commit the kind of atrocities we saw from the 12th day of the protest up until yesterday. Those are, possibilities that I'm hoping the government security agencies will investigate. But the president rejected it and condemned it in all its entity. The third one is the welfare of the police, which was one of the demands by the NSAS protesters, even though they restricted it to salary, but Mr. President expanded it to welfare. And incidentally, his administration has provided the platform for that by passing the Police Trust Fund Act. So Mr. President spoke about that. The fourth one is poverty eradication, which I think he spent more time in that. He reeled out all the policies that his government has introduced, from trader money to, agro, name them, all of them, and then called on the youth to take advantage of those programs. Now, based on the feedback I got, it appears for a lot of reasons those programs were not reaching out to the youth. And the reality speaks for itself. If we've got, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, a figure between 40 million to 130 million youths who are either underemployed, unemployed, or disenchanted, then it's very clear that these programs are not yet reaching out to the youth. And I think that is the onus on the government to see how those programs would be taken advantage of by the youth. If there is, a tradition of patronage, then the government needs to break that tradition of patronage so that the average person can benefit from those programs, whether he knows someone or he doesn't know anyone. Now, the fifth one is he regretted the loss of life. And I think based on the feedback I got, that is where he should have probably done better. A lot of the people that responded felt there was no empathy in Mr. President's message. They felt he should have reached out to perhaps specifically mentioning the death with regards to the NSAS protest and the other fallout of that, especially in Abuja, in Lagos, name them. There are several instances of that, and most of the feedback, talked about that. My own perspective as a risk management expert is that he's got his style. There are deaths that have occurred across the Federation, and Mr. President responded to it almost in a similar manner. So perhaps that is his style. But bottom line is that the feedback felt Mr. President should have been more empathetic.
Let me read out that portion you're talking about. I think it's the 8th paragraph, where he says the result of this is clear to all observers. And if you recall, I said the president is always careful with the choice of his words. They're always very, pregnant with many interpretations. And this part says human lives have been lost. Human lives have been lost. Does that also not carry, intrinsically empathy?
Now, for those who, and incidentally, I'm one of those school of thoughts, empathy would have entailed a direct message to anyone who lost someone, stating clearly that as a president, this is my steps. I'm sending out a delegation as an example, or myself, I would visit so and so place. Just like most the governor of Borno State does, or the governor of Lagos State does. But like I said, everybody has his style. Mr. President spoke along, like you rightly mentioned, in his manner. And perhaps that is his style. But others expected a bit more than that, especially in the area of empathy. Now, the last point is the caution to our international partners and neighbors. Caution because, of course, they reached conclusions and issued statements on the developments in Nigeria. And given his position, he has a retinue of intelligence that perhaps told him differently. So, in a nutshell, these are the themes that I arrived. And on a general level, one of the most significant developments that came out of Mr. President's speech is a statement by one of the major funding bodies for the NSAS movement, the Feminist Coalition. I think they were probably the biggest funding movement for the protest. As at yesterday, they said they had generated 145 million naira and several other currencies for the protest. They released a statement saying that they are no longer funding the protest. So clearly, they have listened to Mr. President's speech. So that, for me, is an indication that Mr. President's speech had reached the right quarters, and people are responding accordingly.
Well, Dr. Kabir Adamu, that's a point that Dr. Akomas made, and that, in a sense, also ties to the issue you have analyzed with regard to the situation at the Lekki Admiralty Toll Plaza on Tuesday night. Dr. Akomas, of course, you heard what he said, that in a presidential broadcast, you wouldn't expect the president to be dabbling in the situations that remain very fluid and in which the facts remain unclear. And you are saying the president hasn't shown enough empathy on the basis of what you ticked off. But some persons writing on that have also indicated, oh, the president didn't say a word at all about the Lekki toll incident on Tuesday. Does what Dr. Akoma said not have, some very strong meaning to say, look, you don't expect the president to speak one moment today and then 2 days or 3 days later, when the facts become clearer, the president is recounting what he had earlier said. Because I'm sure you would also have apprehended some of the issues. There were initial accounts. Some of those accounts have been revised. There were initial accounts also of persons who were the perpetrators and the initial deniers, and then the establishment of or setting up of committees and so on and so forth. It looks like the fog is still around it. The incident, whether it occurred or not, is not in that. But as to the deeper details, would the president, as Dr. Akoma said, couldn't have been making a comment or a presidential pronouncement on that?
Well, you're right. The fog is still very thick with regards to the circumstances. However, it has generated enormous local and international attention. I am aware that the British Parliament has considered a motion on the development. I'm aware that the AU has issued a statement. The ECOWAS chairman has issued a statement. Of course, in the local media, everybody's speaking about it. And we saw even the fallout of it. So to that extent, there was an expectation from a sizable number of Nigerians for some form of empathy, even if for instance, indicating that an investigative panel like the Defense Headquarters mentioned, the president could have endorsed that and assured Nigerians that his administration would definitely reach the bottom, because we're worried. Before I left home this morning, one of the things that my 11-year-old asked me is it possible that uniformed men can go out and do the kind of things that she saw in Lekki? Now that's an 11-year-old, and she's worried. She's traumatized as an 11-year-old. So that's the kind of empathy. And there are three things that messages like that would convey. The first one is empathy, then confidence building, and hope. A lot of people are traumatized. It's ironic, actually, even though this is not the remit of our conversation, that the same things that the youths were complaining about was, as it were, what happened at Lekki. Now, who was behind it or whether it happened, we don't yet know. But all I know is that there is enough evidence to have warranted some form of empathy from Mr. President. But again, like I said, it is his style. And like Claire, quoted, he has expressed it in the manner that he felt. Let's remember that he's a military man. By his training, he uses words carefully. And perhaps this is the extent to which he could have committed himself for now.
All right, thank you. Dr. Akomas, just before we wrap up this segment, what would you expect to see going forward after this broadcast?
After this broadcast, what I expect is a strong, coordinated effort. So far, we have seen evidences of some level of coordination, looking at what the governors have been doing and all the rest. But it has to be strengthened. The coordination between the national level and the sub-nationals is very important. That's one. Two, and most importantly, as we've seen both past, present, and religious leaders appealing to the youth, to everybody, to, exercise restraint. It is very important that that be done. 3, there is need to consciously and effectively restore confidence to the people. Confidence about their movements and freedom to, go about their normal businesses and look forward to it. 2, confidence that this that happened, we have learned a lesson and we are going to do things to make sure it wouldn't and doesn't happen again. And 3, there is need for us to begin to have a rethink and work on the wrong perceptions, because it's like following what happened. Does appear like people think anybody in uniform doesn't know any other thing other than the gun that he carries. You have medical doctors, you have psychologists, you have pilots, you have accountants. These are also technocrats and professionals in uniform, all of us working. And most importantly, we as a nation, and particularly the youth, should know that most of those people in the, police and other
services,
are also youth. They're within that bracket, most of them. So, going forward, we have to harness what is out there, what is within government. We have people in the legislative assemblies at the states and national level. We have also to work on the structure of youth that we have. Those that are very enlightened, those are semi, and those that may not be as enlightened. And then let us take seriously this issue and the impact of what taking away history from our curriculum has cost us. Because if people have over the years been made to understand how far we've gone, how we have come, and how we got here, there are actions that are repeating themselves that should not be allowed to repeat, because most people now, I asked a young person yesterday, not too young, 30-something years old. I said, I hardly see you read newspapers. I hardly see you read any book, not even novels. All you do is your phone. And people pushing all sorts of things into the internet. You read and you take them as true. And you don't have the mechanism yourself to check whether it is fake or true. It is a problem. So let's begin to work towards. It should be part of the whole thing that we should work towards.
And lessons going forward.
Lessons going forward. And then, like I said, government, yes, demands and pressure on government is too much. Talking about budgets, finances, and funding. But we must do something. This protest touched on people that had their small saloon, hair-making saloon. Struggling people that opened one small corner shop or that vandalized. So government must come up with a program to cushion the effect of that on these people.
You know what, Claire, I mean, that's the pith of our second topic for conversation. But why I was speaking a while ago, you picked that up, and the president also touched on it. Every time you have a crisis situation, the social media usually comes in because of the kinds of message and messaging and misinformation and disinformation arising there from Kabiru. I'm sure you must have seen a number of videos. The number of videos that you probably have downloaded in the past 1 week would have crashed your phone if you were not deleting almost immediately.
Kingsley, I think we should just let's since they are still staying with us for the next part of our program. So this is another issue that would come up. So I'd just like to appreciate both of you for analyzing the president's broadcast. But do stay with us while we take a break. And our second topic is also a related issue. We are counting the cost of the End SARS protests in various parts of the country. Don't go away.
My name is Nando Jamda Muhammad.
Stevita.
Hussein Musa.
Roduna Joel Finji.
Said Musa. John. I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
And I said plantain. Na kai kimamin shekara uku.
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
Ina wannan sana'ar lemu ne domin Najeriya ta ci gaba.
Ina sa domin Najeriya ta kyau.
And you can see how we are doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Ina zaune ne a Plateau na business. Kuma ina yin wannan domin ci gaban ƙasar Najeriya.
For a better Nigeria.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Well, we're getting on to our second topic, which is on End SARS protests, counting the cost. Of course, with some linkage directly to the president broadcast last night. We're being joined now by two other guests. First, let's welcome a Nigerian youth and President Yoruba Council of Youth, Oladotun Hassan. Oladotun, pleasure to have you with us on the program this morning.
Pleasure to be on the program.
All right. Also joining us via Zoom, would like to welcome Francis Werido via Zoom. You see him there on the screen. Francis Werido is Managing Director, Titan Insurance Brokers. Francis, delight to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, Kingsley, of course, as I said earlier on, we have our two guests, Dr. Kabir Adamu and the former Deputy Governor of Abia State, Chris Akomas, also here with us. But gentlemen, before we commence our conversation, I'd like for us to listen to this background. It's put together by our correspondent, Victor Azu.
Peaceful protests against police brutality tagged End SARS appear to have now been infiltrated by hoodlums who continue to unleash mayhem across the country. As at the last count, several correctional facilities have been attacked across the country, with over 1,000 inmates said to have been released in Edo State, among them murder suspects. Ondo State appears to be the latest. Government and individual property worth billions of naira have also been destroyed, with Lagos State-owned BRT buses, several police stations, and the Nigerian Ports Authority headquarters set on fire, among others. Several lives have also been lost, sadly. With efforts continuing to bring the situation under control, issues of compensation are already being raised by individuals who may have lost livelihoods and loved ones. These are times when insurance might have come handy, but how many Nigerians have one? The real cost of the crisis to the nation will be better assessed when the dust finally settles. In the meantime, guests on Good Morning Nigeria are standing by to point the way forward.
All right, many thanks to you, Victor Azu, for that background report. Again, let's welcome all our guests here in the studio. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Maybe, Kingsley, we should start with our two new guests. Let's start with the Oladotun Hassan, who is the Nigerian youth and the President, Yoruba Council of Youths.